Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome folks to the Wednesday, April 14th caucus and work session of Albany Common Council. For the record, members present, Ms. Love, Mr. Hoey, Mr. Igo, Ms. Farrell, Mr. Conti, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Ballerin, Mr. Robinson, and Mr. O'Brien. We have our staff, Research Council, Mr. Pichardo. We're also joined with the Water Commissioner, Joseph Coffey. Yes. Okay. It's like someone just, and our clerk, Danielle Gillespie. So good evening. And so we just have Mr. Coffey visiting tonight. Okay, so just getting into the agenda. Approval of minutes. We're going to have the April 5th meeting minutes for approval. That's that. Moving on to local laws. Local law introduced K of 2021. That'll be Mr. Flynn's for the parks, but he is not currently in the meeting. That'll be a referral to Parks and Rec for local law K. Okay. Next on to local
Kelly?
law. Yep.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Mhm.
This does relate to the Beaver Creek project,
Yep. Mhm.
and which has gone through the council, et cetera. And we approved the alienation, the home rule for the alienation, I guess, last year. But my question was, did the original Beaver Creek discussion go through planning, or did it go through Parks and Rec?
You know, I do believe planning. Yeah, because Ms. Fahey had a big part in that discussion. So with that being said, you're correct. What we'll do, and well, planning's got a lot going on right now. Also,
Right, I just okay.
Yeah, but you're correct. It was a discussion that went through the planning committee, and I know we're doing the amendments to the USDO. Ms. Fahey, your thoughts? I was going to send it to Parks. It started in planning. What do you think?
Well, actually, wasn't in general services?
let me review and then
Because it's in my ward, so I have been very involved, but I don't know that it was in planning. I'm
I
thinking
don't
general
remember it being in
services.
general services.
yeah, me either. I
You don't?
No.
I don't know. We can go back and look.
yeah, we can. For now, we'll say Parks and Rec, and I'll reconcile it once we do the research and figure
No,
out.
it's all, I mean, it's all combined sewer stuff. So, yeah, really, we might have even had, I don't know, we'll have to go back and look.
Yeah, and this is talking about alienation of parkland, which they did to do what they did, and then replacement of it. So I mean, there's kind of an overlap. So
All right, I'm gonna check now in my,
okay, so we'll go back to that. As of now, I'm saying parks, and we can adjust that. Okay. So that was for the local law introduced. Next, under local laws held would be local law C. Mr. O'Shea, I know it wasn't on the active calendar, and I think Mr. Pichardo was anticipating me, putting forth, or at least talking to the council about this amendment that I'm proposing, which I may as well just go into right now. I did send it out to folks, so hopefully everyone got a chance to look at it. I managed to make a few calls today. I didn't get to call everyone because I was at work, but thoughts. I would like to do this and make this adjustment, but again, this is a conversation right now, and if the body doesn't or if members don't want to entertain it, then.
Can I, is it,
But-
just because Mr. Coffey's here, is it possible to, before we get into this, just because I think it's going to be a lengthy discussion, maybe
think-
let him go and say anything and then we can get into it?
Okay. Thanks for being so thoughtful. Okay, it's local law. So we'll skip that for now, go to local law J, and we'll have Mr. Coffey, the most responsive commissioner we have here in the city, fill us in on what's what. So go ahead, sir.
Uh-oh, expectations, I don't know. This is probably the simplest request that I will ever make of the council. And what we found as we started queuing up our lead service replacement program, we started looking through the city code, and we found out that in the city code, we're asking people to use the best quality lead service, the lead pipe, when they do their lead services. Of course, they haven't made this pipe in I don't know how many years, and when services are being replaced right now, when the permits are always permitted for type K copper tubing, and that simply is the only change that I think we're asking for the revision in this local law. So that's probably the least controversial, simplest thing we'll probably ever ask. But that's essentially it, Councilman.
Okay, thank you. So everyone satisfied with the information? Okay, all right, so we
Thank
will.
you, Joe. Have a nice dinner.
The spaghetti sauce is still hot. Thank you. You guys have a great meeting. Stay safe, please.
Okay, and so it's been aging, it's not being amended, so, well, actually, we held it, so we can pass it on Mondays at our meeting, so we'll move ahead with local law J. So, okay, back to local law C and the amendment. I'd also like to add that Ms. Frederick has joined us, Mr. Ballerin, and Council President Ellis has also joined us. I did, okay, I think I got everyone.
Kelly,
Should we go through the entire agenda and then come back to see at the end,
Because it's.
just to get
okay.
everything out of the
All
way?
right. Okay, that's.
Kelly,
Yes,
Kelly, I was not yet in the meeting when you did the prior attendance. I don't know if you knew that I was coming in. I think you just mentioned new people.
okay, Ms. O'Shea, yeah. And, but I mentioned you when I was saying we didn't forget about it, but I didn't say you were in the meeting, so thank you for that. So, okay, let's continue through the agenda. That was local law J. That was number 9 on under local laws. On to ordinances introduced. Nothing. Flipping on through to resolutions introduced. And so this resolution, these are for installing the telecom equipment on city-owned right-of-way. It's 364221 and 374221. Mr. Anani, I believe, wanted to sponsor one of those, but he's not in the meeting now. And I know JR reached out to Ms. Fahey and Mr. Shea about it. And Judy.
I just wanted to make a note though, real quick. The numbers are 37 and 38. 36 was the condemning the George Langdon resolution. There was a numbering error from court counsel, and I fixed it and I sent it out again. So it's 37 and 38 for those resolutions.
Okay. Yeah. 37, 38. And also, I think I noticed in one, the original resolution number was like 36, and then in the memorandum it was like 37.
Yeah, in the new supporting legislation, I fixed it all, and I fixed it in the agenda.
Okay, so we're 37
and 38.
and 38. So
so the Verizon one's maintaining its 37. AT&T is now 38.
37. 38. So I will give our young member, I want to say he requested 37. So that, again, these are going to the planning committee, both of them. One will be sponsored by Mr. Anani and one by Ms. Fahey in planning. Any questions on that? They'll be going to committee. 37, Mr. Anani, 38 planning, and Ms. Fahey. Okay. Moving on to resolutions held, continuing.
Yeah, Kelly, I have an MC and and Jamel
you
has
know
one
what?
as well.
You're right. Okay. So, and the thing is, do we have numbers for Mr. Robinson's?
Mine's 39, so I would assume his is 40.
Yeah, his will be numbered 40.
Yeah, just sent it to
So-
JR, forwarded to you guys.
Yeah, so Mr. Robinson, you're up. You want to talk about that stuff? Just because it's an MC. Well, actually, Miss Farrell, you first. Can you just kind of give an idea what the MC is?
So I'm not sure if anybody, for those that were in the finance committee meeting, we had a position of Parks was changing one of their positions from laborer 2 to laborer 1. Which is, I applaud them for doing so. It's important for departments to actually look at what their workforce does and hire appropriately, not just because they have a budget line there. So it was really wonderful that they did that. And another positive outcome from that, I would say, was the highlight that there is still this position in the city of Albany that pays less than $15 an hour. We know that the mayor is absolutely in favor of every City of Albany employee making, she said in her budget speech, at least $15.52 an hour. And so that is certainly part of their negotiation. This is a contract that needs to be negotiated. However, none of the finance committee members were comfortable moving forward with a position that paid less than $15 an hour. So they are in negotiation. I've been speaking a lot with the mayor's office about this. They are also fully committed to ensuring that that all of the City of Albany employees are paid $15.52 an hour. But I also think it is very important to be clear and set guidelines or set deadlines on this. So this is a resolution that says that all City of Albany employees will be paid a living wage of at minimum $15 an hour by June 1st. I did tell the administration that I would be flexible on that date if they needed more time. However, the other issue with this is Parks needs that position filled and they need it filled this summer. So June 1st left some flexibility with that. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, so I saw the reso said by June 1st. Does that have any binding effect?
It doesn't have any binding effect. I mean, you are absolutely correct. And that was something that JR and I talked about, that there is not any binding effect to this. And that is one of the issues with it. But as I said to JR, I will be the teeth with it. I would like something official that the council votes on. And if it is not something that's moved forward with, then I'll be the teeth and I will make a big stink about it.
All right.
Okay,
So I would like to move forward with it on Monday. I'd like us to pass it. And so if there's any issues with that, please let me know. Or if there's anything that different you would like to see in that resolution.
I'd like to be a co-sponsor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jimmy.
I'd like to be co-sponsor also, Jimmy. Thank you.
okay. All co-sponsors? Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Go ahead, Jamal.
Okay, thank you. So I just sent a resolution to JR, and you all should be receiving it shortly. But it is a resolution to honor the life and legacy of Minister Janie Jacobs Franklin. She was an influential member of the faith community and contributed much to gospel music in the community. And then also she was a member at the time of the Citizens Police Review Board. So she's has contributed much to the city of Albany, and so I thought this would be a great way to honor her and her legacy.
Okay. So that's 40, 42, 21. Let me see. That it? Okay. All right. Next, to resolutions held. Number 8 under resolutions held. Resolution 2022-21R as amended by Mr. O'Shea and Community Development. You want to speak on? Oh, was she here? Oh, yeah, she is right in the middle. Okay.
I don't know, for me, I'm up in the left-hand corner. We know. So we had our joint public hearing on the grants. We've had, this was on April 7th. We had our second meeting. And we had previously had a meeting to review the budget overall for year 47 and the allocations being made, and then the process of rating proposals was described to us in that meeting, and we were notified of what the tentative awards were. The applicants were all notified of that and made aware that they had an opportunity to appeal the determinations that were made. They were excellent applications. I believe all members received notice of what those tentative awards were and to the various organizations. I think it was about 15 different organizations. So we, nobody came to appeal. And so we adopted the resolution as amended, because we were amending the date to reflect that there was a public hearing on April 7th. There were other dates in that resolution. So that passed with a positive recommendation unanimously. I don't know if you want me.
Yeah, you may as well, the next, well, it's Ms. Love. Is that what you were going to ask? Number 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
We also discussed that, and I apologize that I haven't done the minutes. I just got back in town very late on Monday. But we had a good, productive conversation about the various programs that are assist with home ownership issues, including Faye Andrews and her organization, the Albany Housing Authority, and then we also had the Albany Land Bank talk about their programs and the frustration with there not quite being enough funding to assist people, especially early on before houses deteriorate to the point where they then become zombie properties or go into foreclosure. So this passed out of committee with a positive recommendation with one amendment. We deleted the word Republican from Congress because it is a US Congress and not a Republican Congress. And so it was reported out with that amendment favorably, unanimously. Joyce, anything you want to add?
Hey, thank you for nodding, Ms. Love. We can't hear you. You're muted.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Judy hit it
Okay.
all. I think it
Okay.
was a good conversation that night.
Yeah.
But Judy hit it all. Thank you.
And so at the meeting, Joyce, it will be you who will move her passage as amended.
Yes.
So thank you for that, Mr. Shea. And with that, that's the end of our regular agenda. So we'll go back to local law C. And so I like I said, I sent it out with some changes. And I mean, I just think that if we completely take it away, it would leave us in a bad spot, and we risk harm to both our citizens, our police, maybe even property. But again, the changes I made, if anyone has any questions about it, I made it so the chief or deputy needed to be on site making that call. I mean, that if you think about adding these things, it narrows down the likelihood of it being used. So chief or deputy on site, making that determination. Again, the riotous situation, that when we had that public safety meeting, everyone was talking about riot and the definition of riot, and we're going round and round. So what I did was I went into the New York State penal law to the riot section, riot first, and that's where that language came from. The 11 or more folks engage in violent and tumultuous behavior, property damage, people getting injured, and whatnot. There's a couple of these circumstances or issues that need to exist in order to use it. And so, and of course, being no alternative either. I have in there as determined by that the chief or a deputy chief in that instance. And also in this I included Mr. Ballerin's portion that's similar to Mr. Shea's, that included, barricaded suspect or hostage situation. That's also included in it. And so, again, my concern from experience is an injury. You take away the gas and you put people face to face and in close proximity, and things could go wrong. And I think we have a responsibility both to our residents and our police that are employees of the city of Albany to keep them all safe. And also that property owner whose property may be being damaged is also a taxpayer, and we have a responsibility to him too. So if anyone had any questions or comments, and I'm just seeing if there's support. If there's not, we're moving on to the amendments as Mr. Shea wrote them up, and we'll vote on it on Monday. So I believe Mr. Hoey was first.
Well, thank you, Kelly. Yeah, I was shocked when I saw your changes. I'm going to be honest. And, we did not have the kinetic weapons in the original, and you put it back in, rubber bullets. I try to tell you, I have a cousin lost his eye because of rubber bullet. They're doing this again in Ireland. You see the stuff going on. A country or a state or a municipality that has to use violence against their own citizens, that's not the country that I was born to. I'm sorry. Now, we heard from the police themselves, this gas has not been used twice in 30-something years. So what did they do? And nobody's answering me. What did you do before we had this gas? What was done? For you to say, well, we're taking away a tool. Number one, it's not a tool. It's a freaking weapon. And, it's meant to hurt people, meant to do it. Now, you were standing next to me, and so was the council president, Corey. We were not warned when that gas was released. Yeah, there was fireworks, and they weren't the heavy duty. They were like M80s or cherry bombs. And again, I question, why weren't those people who threw that Why wasn't there undercover out there? You know, I have my suspicion that we're so undermanned in this police department that we don't have enough manpower to do it. We don't have enough manpower to be out there when this stuff is going on. Okay. Now, what happened in Minnesota the other day? The officer thought she was reaching for a taser, reached for a gun and killed a kid. And whether he had, it was a traffic stop and the kid's dead. And, everybody I talked to, why don't they just let it go? You have the plate number, you know who the kid is. Why resort to violence? Okay. And we don't have room to make mistakes. People under pressure. When I was with you that night, those guys were out in the hot sun all day in this riot gear. And, the tempers were ready to go. And instead of de-escalating what was going on, we had an escalation. And it went on a lot longer than maybe if they would have just calmed down and talked to people. There was instigators there, and you know it, you saw it. So, I'm not happy with the changes. I'm just not happy with the way this whole thing is going. I don't like hearing people saying it's a tool. It is not a tool. Okay. Human life is not a tool, something that, the electric chair, is that a tool? Is a gas chamber a tool? Was Hitler with the showers and putting the Jewish people in there, was that a tool? But it was for the public safety. And that's what we got to worry about in a democracy. And we saw our democracy almost slip away this year. We saw what happened January 6th. Okay, so, we're on the edge there. And again, I bring back today's paper. They showed the protest in 1986, people laying down at the Capitol, laying on the ground, protesting going into war, spending and putting our soldiers at harm. It's just not right. And,
Right.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hoey. I'll just real quickly, I see it as a tool. We disagree on that, to keep people apart and safer. The idea of the officers being out in the crowd up there on Henry Johnson Boulevard, it was different than downtown. It's rough. It's a tough decision, and it's really a risk. Were you standing there when the guy was about to assault Mr. Ballerin? Were you there, Mr. Hoey?
No, I was with the chief.
I was
standing with the
yeah,
chief.
Mr. Ballerin was simply talking to the guy, and he started going after him, trying to calm him down. And again, they were not just regular fireworks. They were commercial grade or better. It was thunderous. It was dangerous. And even an M80 blowing up on your foot or any part of your body will blow.
Yes.
So it's not safe.
Well, it's not safe. There's a lot of stuff not safe.
But also, and I'm sorry that what happened to you, Mr. Hoey, happened. But again, I tried to get you out of there. And it's not your fault. But when you mentioned how the officer seemed angry and was pushing you along, you got to remember they're trying to secure ground behind them to leave you. They don't have time to listen to someone say, "I'm a council member." And again, I'm sorry for what happened to you.
Well, I don't care about that.
They're securing the space. I have kind of an issue with how far out they expand it, but they can't leave you behind them. I know you weren't getting along too well and you wanted to stop for a minute. That's why they didn't do it. You're a security risk behind the line. So that's that. And then as far as the kinetic energy munitions, if anyone wants to change any of this, that I'm more than happy with changing any of it. But okay, let's move on to Mr. O'Brien.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you, Kelly. Although I don't know why the issue of kinetic energy rubber bullets was added, because I don't think that was originally part of it. But to me, it's kind of a stretch to compare gas chambers in Nazi Germany to the use of tear gas, and it's certainly not a Geneva Conventions violation. It's I don't know if tool is the right word, but To me, I would have difficulty voting for an absolute ban. And to me, Kelly's amendments answer a lot of the concerns that Tom voiced. For example, there was no warning. It should be authorized on the highest level. Obviously, it wasn't, because the chief was caught in the crossfire himself. And I wasn't there on any of those days, so I didn't see it, but I heard Kelly's description of it, Tom's description of it. It sounds like maybe it wasn't used in the best manner, but that in itself may not be justification for an absolute banning of it. And quite frankly, my concern is, I don't know what the alternative is. Is it hand-to-hand cop for each rioter? And that's not a situation we want. What we want is humane crowd dispersal. And maybe it was overused during those incidents. I think I got that impression from Kelly's account of what happened, which I didn't see. But it makes me a lot more comfortable voting for better control of tear gas than just simply banning it. So that's my perspective. People may disagree, but I like it, Kelly. I think you did an honest effort. The kinetic energy, the kinetic devices, you could take that out of it. I don't think that originally was part of it. I'm not sure how that came in. But that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. O'Brien. And what I also like to add, and then I'll turn it over to you, Mr. O'Shea, is that we're just adding this stuff to the code. Okay, it's not like it was part of the law. They ran afoul of it, and now we're taking it away. This is an instance where we're trying to get better control over this stuff. Add some language to our laws to better control the use of this, and so it would make sense to adjust it and then go from there, as opposed to outright banning it. So I will stop talking, and Mr. O'Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Kimbrough. So first, I want to say, I know that there are a lot of people talking about this issue in the community. At our last meeting, we heard from a lot of people. We heard people, landlords, who came to talk about different bills, who then said they support this legislation off the cuff. We didn't hear anybody saying, I'm opposed to this. I've been out of town, and I have not organized anybody, to speak for anything. It is something people feel strongly about, and they are stepping forward, and they have been stepping forward and addressing, this. So what I'm doing is just listening to people and reacting to, the idea of the police becoming a paramilitary force over time. I certainly thought we were on the right track with regard to our police and community policing. And it seems to me as though we have taken a couple steps back, and there has been more attacks on people of color in our city. There's good reason for people to be concerned and for there to have been this discussion about reinventing and reforming policing. And we passed a resolution endorsing the report. And the report doesn't talk about banning tear gas once. It talks about it twice. 2 different committees. This was a key recommendation of it. Restrict the use of tear gas in heavily populated, dense neighborhoods and look for safe and effective alternative means which will allow for the efficient disbursement of unauthorized mass gatherings. The other one says the police have many tools at their disposal for crowd control and should rely on de-escalation techniques rather than tear gas and battle armor. Goals and strategies there specifically say eliminate the use of tear gas and decrease the militarization of the police force. Goal 1, ban the use of tear gas and decrease the use of military style equipment by the Albany Police Department. That was the result of a 9-month process endorsed by this body. And I'm confused as to why there is this desire to essentially gut this legislation. One of the things that has happened in these amendments is the language that I had put in regarding, that was in my bill, regarding giving people notice. I'm sorry. So adequate notice is given to individuals occupying indoor or outdoor spaces in the vicinity to allow them to protect themselves against exposure. So that specifically speaks to the residential issue when we agreed to make an exception in order to get this voted out of committee. The exception was for hostage type situation, which has been described in the bill. I note that Mr. Kimbrough's amendment does not do anything to protect residents, certainly not clearly. It requires notice. Well, they currently require notice in their policy of that, and that did not prevent people in their homes from feeling the effects of the release of the tear gas. The amendment also does not address what Mr. Kimbrough has raised in a couple times with regard to following people down the street or pushing further out. So he has stated that he has disagreed with that. This does nothing to protect against that. And frankly, once you're releasing tear gas, it is then endless, essentially. There's, you're not going to pull back police and get the situation under control in a different kind of way at that point. And what standards you come up with for that. I note that in using the definition of riot, we're dealing with a group of 11 or more people causing alarm, public alarm. And unfortunately, I know a lot of situations in which people are afraid of 11 or more people gathering any place and being boisterous in a way that they are not used to. I am not aware of there being any convictions of people being charged with a riot. So you use this terminology, and the problem is there's a right to free speech, there's a right to assembly, and how this gets applied, how this language gets applied. So if there are not convictions in the city of Albany of people for rioting, then how is it we're now going to say to the police, and that's after due process. So somebody's accused of rioting, if they're accused of the crime of inciting a riot or rioting, then they would get their time in court before punishment is imposed on the person. In this case, we're basically saying that the police get to decide that this is now a riot, use that terminology, and without there being any due process, releasing the punishment of tear gas. So I have a lot of problems with that. I think really what we need to be doing is going back to having more conversations with the Community Policing Advisory Board with regard to how we expect policing to occur in the city of Albany, for the police chief and others to sit down with people who are concerned about the treatment. We need to de-escalate. We need to demilitarize our police. We need, I mean, I've seen it all over the internet, with this most recent individual being killed. And, and the conversations are, people say we got to stop thinking in terms of, oh my gosh, this person, oh, we had their ID and they didn't really need to stop him. They could have let him go. They knew who he was. They knew where to find him. They knew where to, to charge him rather than continuing to escalate the situation. So and I'm aware of many demonstrations in which there have been tense situations going back many years ago in which the police figured out how to de-escalate the situation rather than going toe to toe and insisting that that's the way to deal with it. And finally, we can't ignore the fact that this was using, and Mr. Kimbrough, you said to me, you think the riots are going to be worse this summer. And what are the riots going to be about? It's going to be about police treatment of people of color. And that's what this was about. And so we are in a circular kind of situation in which now we're going to use tear gas against people of color, predominantly people of color, in neighborhoods predominantly occupied by people of color, because they are protesting police treatment of people of color. It's hard for me not to think that this is kind of insane. And I think that if we're serious about changing and re-envisioning police, we follow the recommendations in the report that the mayor delivered to us, that has been represented to us as by the leadership of the council as a document in which the administration expects to implement all of the recommendations. As Michelle Obama often said of her husband, my bond is my word. And we voted for that report. And people are speaking loud and clear that this is important to them. I think the police should be about protecting the public first and foremost. And this goes contrary, the use of tear gas goes contrary to that. So I am opposed to the amendment. I would rather see this be voted on Monday as it currently stands with the amendment I made at the last meeting. And I promise you that's the last I'm going to say about this.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. I didn't say it's gonna be violent this summer. I said it could be. I can't predict the future or tell the future. So I didn't say that when we were talking. I said it could be. it might be, and what if. And just going back to and I'll stop after this, the definition of riot, you're explaining it, but you're saying violent, engage in tumultuous and violent conduct, but there's more to it. There are other conditions that need to exist. Intentionally or recklessly creates grave risk of public harm, of course, resorts of that conduct, someone gets harmed. I mean, so there are other pieces to that. It's not just that there's that behavior. There's some other elements that legally have to be met in order for tear gas to be used. And then also, I don't think that as members that voted on the collaborative's report or to move forward that plan is are going against wanting that change by saying, hey, let's stop for a minute. We don't think we should get rid of this just yet. And even the report doesn't say that. The goal is to ban it, but there's discussions around eliminating it, which I'm fine with. We need an alternative though. We can't just take it away. I think it would be problematic. Either there folks are going to be hand to hand, face to face, and things could happen, or there's going to be a lot of law enforcement standing by while things bad are happening. So I'll stop there. Ms. Fahey, please.
Thank you. I've always been right from the start, I want our police to take a problem-solving approach instead of a top-down, authoritative, militaristic approach. Absolutely. I'm all in favor of de-escalation techniques. And I understand in the police reform recommendations, again, they're against tear gas, use de-escalation techniques. But we've never really had that full discussion about what that means and what the limitations are given certain circumstances. And that's where I'm so incredibly frustrated that this piece of legislation was moved out of committee so quickly without that full discussion. Absolutely, everything I've read about tear gas, it is horrible, absolutely horrible. But I also understand that there are situations where people are out of control and people's lives are at risk. Yes, property damage, we care about that too, but I am talking about people's lives at risk. When you start throwing Molotov cocktails, when you start throwing fireworks, bricks through windows, as we heard that police lieutenant talk about, where she was injured, what is the alternative here? Why, Tom, you ask, why aren't people going into crowds and de-escalating? I agree with you. It's a manpower situation, probably. You can't go in and shut every little situation down because things are out of control. Now, I'm just so incredibly frustrated with this. And, thank God we've only used this tear gas twice in the last how many years? I guess I'm going to, I'm going to say we need to have a fuller discussion with this, but I don't accept the fact that you can talk about, rely on de-escalation techniques. You need to have that fuller discussion about what that means. We need to have that conversation about how our police are being trained. We need to have that discussion about what happened in this situation. Yes, a lot of mistakes were made, but there hasn't been a full discussion on what could have been done differently. So I don't think there's been a vote in the time I've been on the council that I am more frustrated with than this. So that's it. That's all I have to say as of now. Thanks.
Thank you. And I just want to add also, Tom, you mentioned what do we do differently? 2020 was a year like no other. Pandemic aside, race relations, George Floyd. I mean, we're in so far away from where we've ever been on these issues, and it's a shame that some folks died, but I think we need to be here. We need to work through this. This is as great a time as ever. We have to deal with this. The thing is, I think, Mr. O'Shea, you think I'm against this. I remember I'm the vote that got it out of committee. If I wasn't concerned about this and didn't care about it and didn't want the reform, I could have simply just voted no there and eliminated. But we need this. I care about the reform as much as you don't think I do. But I mean, there's a lot of work ahead, and we got to talk through this stuff and move forward together. And I don't think we're doing that. And so Mr. Igo made a point during our lengthy 4-hour public safety meeting saying, hey, we're going round and round with this stuff, but the rest of the council's not here. The people that are going to make these decisions aren't even a part of the conversation. So I'll take the hit on that, because you tried to, get me to pay attention and make it a broader conversation amongst all of us.
Kelly, it was closer to 5 hours, but you mentioned, I've been bringing this up since I've been on the council. We are short policemen, and at least 60. And then you have the back office, we're short dispatchers before COVID. So we can't use COVID as an excuse. Community policing has disappeared. I don't have a community policeman up in the 15th ward now, and we do have crime up here. So I mean, yeah, there are problems out there, and we have discussed it, and I'll shut up right now. Thank you.
Right, and yeah, that wasn't what I meant by it's a year like no other. I mean, folks of color are fed up, and we're at an inflection point, and something's got to give and something's got to change. This police community relationship needs to be reworked. It absolutely does. That's what I meant by saying that, not anything else. Ms. Farrell.
So I was out both nights in the summer, and the first night, it was unlike anything I've ever seen. The feel was different. It was quite frankly scary. And the thing that's the most impactful thing to me was on Pearl Street. There is this young woman, just over college age, maybe in college, who was standing outside of one of the storefronts on Pearl Street because she lived upstairs. And if the windows were broken on that storefront, anybody could get into her apartment, which, as a side note, is probably a giant codes violation. But that night it didn't matter. She was scared to death of the throngs coming through. She was a Black woman, and she did not want somebody to be able to access her bedroom. She wouldn't be able to go to bed. Every other storefront was broken. There were fires in many of them. It was a different feeling. It was scary. And a lot of the people that were out that night were not even from our city. And that's something that I don't want anybody to have to deal with that situation, but Tom asked about what people did in the past. What did the police do in the past? Remember that the reason why that people are having protests is because this is built on decades upon decade upon decade of police brutality. It wasn't nice 40 years ago. They used fire hoses, they used batons. People got the crap beat out of them. That's also not a good solution. However, that second night, and I'm thankful I did not get the tear gas like Tom did. I was walking down, and so I got like the after effects of it. And I stayed with the crowd a bit. That was completely unacceptable. And I fully believe that we need to have a legislation that creates a difference between what can happen on those two nights. Because that second night, I think the police were as much at fault, if not more at fault, for anything that happened in that situation than the people that were there. It was ridiculous and it was completely unacceptable. So I think, I mean, I agree with what Kathy was saying. I think that there needs to be some sort of real solution with this, because I don't want our police to have to, I don't want to take away any tool that, I just don't want to have to resort to extreme violence in a situation that there actually is a serious safety situation. There are residents that were impacted by this, and I mean, I think DJ's here. DJ is one of the people that was really part of a lot of things, and I saw his hand go up and down. So I am curious what he has to say on it. But I think that legislation is incredibly important on this, and I just ultimately I believe we have to have rules on this. But the other piece is the mayor has been pretty upfront about saying that she would veto council member Deschette's legislation, which brings us back to square one with this. So I think the broader question that we have to ask is, do we want some sort of regulation or not? I mean, and I would love to see something that we could support and move forward with that will actually get enacted. And I personally would love to see that sooner rather than later. So that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson, you're muted if you, okay, you're good.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Kimbrough. I have so many different emotions running through me right now as I listen to everybody speak. Let me just say that I wasn't there the first night. I wasn't there from the beginning, but when I got there, it wasn't a need for, I don't know if it was tear gas that was used. It wasn't a need for it at that time. And I just want to have, like, I just want to paint a picture, because sometimes some of these incidents that we're talking about is coming off of people getting poked at. And, like, I don't think it's fair that a person can poke at someone, and then when they respond to being poked at, they have to be subjected to different things. And, the reference of tear gas as a tool would be like old school in the elementary when kids got out of line. When I first started out school, I used to get paddled in school, and those that hurt, but it also left a stain on you. Every time I walk in Arbor Hill Elementary School, I don't care what the occasion is, I still think about Mr. Edmund O'Neill giving me the paddle. And so what we're talking about here is tear gas, right? Tear gas isn't gonna de-escalate anything. When you start using tear gas, it just makes people get upset and get more out of control. So it's not a tool, it's not helping, it's not making anything go away. And so I just think that when you abuse something, you don't get to say, okay, we're just gonna use it like this now. And I just think that, we're getting away from, honest conversations. We need culturally responsive education training for our police officers. We understand that we have a police force that is not from this city. We understand that we have people that come in to this job that are scared as ever. And that's an unfortunate situation that we don't have Albanians on that police force like we used to, because people keep on asking about what was the difference in the uproars of the past, it was more people from the city. And so why aren't we having a conversation about a conflict resolution team? You know, people from the community that, you know, can be trained, as well as the additional training that these officers need. Because it's obvious this isn't working, and it's just not fair to use riot. You know, what if things get out of control? Well, you know, these lives that are being lost when things aren't out of control are stains that we have to live with each and every day, with social media replaying it over and over and over again. And so what I ask everyone to do is think about what you heard from the second ward. The second ward, and it wasn't just Black people, it was white people as well, that are adamantly against, you know, like that was a different type of trauma that our community experienced that night. And here it is a year later, and people are adamantly, and I just say this as a council, I don't want to be part of a group that's not hearing what the people are saying. You know, we ask people to come to our meetings, we ask people to share their feelings and how they really feel. And it just seems like when the people speak, they don't get what they're looking for. So, you know, I will be against the resolution, the adjustments, and I will be in full support of the original resolution, because we can't afford another community to experience what our communities experienced last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else? Okay, so and this was me saying, hey, if members were, Ms. Frederick. You're muted. So we got Ms. Frederick, Mr. Robinson, and then Mr. Valloran.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so a couple things. I was one of the public safety members that was in support of voting it out of committee for a vote, and I'm still in support of doing such without the amendments. Just want to say that up front. But a couple of things during this discussion. The comment about we haven't heard about like what the police force got from the events last summer, what the changes they'd implement were. We did actually, during the public safety meeting, all of, you know, I think a 2-hour presentation, give and take. Right at the end, we had a lessons learned slide, and it was essentially, they would get louder speakers. There was a couple other things that I don't want to, you know, diminish, but it was very much not what we thought we were looking for. At least, you know, I'll speak for myself. I thought I was looking for in terms of, you know, we learned that what we did was wrong, or what we did could have been done better, except it was nothing of that. It was more so of, we need louder speakers, we need to do this. And it was very like, very shortcoming, in my opinion. So I just want to make that clear. The other thing is, I apologize, and I haven't heard anything, but the comment about the veto, I would like some little bit more clarity on that piece, because I haven't heard anything myself. And so just a little thrown off. So if anybody has any context and can share, that would be very helpful for me.
Yeah, and so am I on? Yeah, just through discussions about the issue and about the legislation, it was stated that it would be vetoed. So that's where we're at. And my thing is, I wanted to try to make some changes and put something in place. Maybe what'll happen is we'll end up starting all over again. So.
And so was that, sorry to jump in there, but was that the original plus the hostage situation that would be vetoed?
The original version while I was coming up with something that was mentioned. Before I even, you know, embarked upon my my effort to change it. I'd been thinking about it from after our meeting and had gotten over, and we had a meeting with the mayor, and that was one of the issues.
Kelly's would not be vetoed, to be clear. Judy's would.
Would you say? Right, yeah.
I just want to, Sonia, I want to respond to your comment about, the police being there and giving recommendations and so on. I was very disappointed with their presentation. And I don't think it was a full discussion about, their thoughts about, using tear gas versus de-escalation techniques. I don't think they did a great job there. So I agree with you on that. But I think there's much more that we should be hearing about as far as the situation police are put in these really extreme, chaotic situation. I just think we needed a much fuller discussion about it. So I just wanted to add that.
Mr. Robinson.
Thank you. So I just want to really quickly say that last year when the incident occurred on 2nd Street near Henry Johnson at a police station, I was actually one of the council members who was a part of that when the tear gas got dispersed. And I just want to say, before the tear gas got dispersed, many of my colleagues who were there, we were actually in the crowd talking to people. And we were actually ourselves de-escalating the situation. However, there was a flashbanger that went in there, and immediately, that's when the tear gas started to fly. There was no warnings given. There was no anything given to let us know that was about to occur. And that was actually a very scary feeling, knowing that this is my district and I do have seniors that live on that block. And it was a summer's night who people had their windows open. There were children who were outside sitting on the stoops. And there was a senior who was actually walking up the street when everything happened. And myself, Miss Joyce and Sonia had to walk him to safety away from the tear gas because it just flooded the whole neighborhood. And so I don't think tear gas can be safely used in urban settings at all, because it's too dense, and the way it spreads throughout the whole, it permeates the community, so to say, and more people are affected than just that immediate crowd. So I believe that we need to really stay on our police department, that they need to come up with some alternative for crowd dispersal. But I won't be in support of any changes to the current legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I'm not a tear gas expert or whatever, but I've experienced it. And in both of those instances, in my opinion, it was an overuse. It just kind of kept, being used. And that's how you got that buildup, I believe. And it did what it did. But also, I disagree that there was only one flashbang. I was right there too. There was probably 2 or 3, boom, 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 and then they started deploying. But then, from the position they were in, I think maybe that could have been it. But then they started dispersing, and as they were walking, a couple of canisters got thrown, and it just went crazy from there. So I think the issue wasn't its use, at least in my eyes, wasn't its use. It was its overuse. Mr. Ballerin.
Thank you. I was at both evenings, and they were very different. They really were. One, there was a crowd that was pretty much looking to set fires and to set buildings on fire, to set people's homes on fire. And it was a very different crowd on Saturday than on Monday. And that's a big problem in how this was used on those 2 dates more heavily, I believe, on Monday than Tuesday, than that Saturday. The one that I want to say is I've gotten a lot of calls on this issue the last 2 weeks. I've gotten a lot of calls from people on multiple sides of this issue. People who are activists, people who are protesters, residents who were just sitting at home and got hit with the gas, you know, and officers that were there trying to deal with, you know, people setting fires in our city. And the one thing I can tell you, everybody has is a lot of pain, a lot of passion, and it is a very sensitive issue for anyone that experienced it, you know, this summer. And I don't think we've talked enough about it. I'm glad we're having a discussion about this issue. I know it's not an easy discussion, and I know that touching these subjects are not easy subjects because they're very raw and they're very sensitive to individuals. And they're very personal. They're very, very personal, depending on where you were that night and how you experienced it, where you were a shop owner on Central Avenue, or where you were a protester that was there protesting decades and a lifetime of feeling like a second grade citizen, and as if your life doesn't matter. You know, the feelings are very, very raw. So I think we need to continue this conversation. I think I know people didn't agree with my amendments, and I respect that. I respect those individuals. Many of those individuals are my friends who did not agree with my amendments. And I respect that. And I respect their viewpoints, and I respect where they come from. And I get that. I am glad that we're looking to add the, you know, if there's a gunman, you know, scenario. I do think that will save lives. I do. And it's a different perspective, a different experience, and I get that. And I respect that, and I'm willing to have a conversation with anybody that doesn't agree with me on that. I also think we need to have more conversation on Mr. Gimbrook's amendments. There are things I don't agree with, and I want to be very clear. I don't think we should ever have officers chasing people with tanks down side streets, throwing tear gas, you know, down side streets, unnecessary. People are trying to run away. They're trying to get away from it. You don't need to chase them with a tank. So I think I'm glad we're starting to have a conversation on this. I know it's a sensitive topic. I know because it's such a sensitive topic, you know, there is the comfort level of going to your corner and, you know, having that conversation just in your corner, but we can't do that. You know, we don't have the luxury of going to our corner and going to our comfort level. We don't have that luxury. We took on these roles to take on tough issues and to listen to individuals and try to make policy that can pass and that can create a better situation for our residents. So I'm glad we're having this discussion. I'm glad that you know, I don't agree with all your amendments, Mr. Greenbook, but I'm glad you brought some of your issues up. And I'd like for council members to bring their issues up, bring their concerns up. Let's discuss it. Let's flush it out. Let's have an honest, open dialogue, and let's pass something that people can feel comfortable to get passed. And so that we get the votes to not just pass it, but to be able to pass it twice if we have to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer and Mr. Hoey.
Yeah, right now, as we're speaking, we got on Facebook, South
South
Station,
Station.
there's a riot, people are upset. And, and again, I'm not a policeman, you were, but I'm a human being and I don't see anybody talking to these people. I just see protecting this South Station and just people being agitated. Why isn't somebody out talking to them? Now, I just read on the thing that somebody's there with a megaphone, which is free speech, and from what I read is, and I wasn't there, that the police were overly aggressive and they whacked the guy and pepper sprayed him. So now we got 120 people watching this and maybe wanting to join the latest riot. We really need to de-escalate. And if I had the answer, the silver bullet, I'd be glad to do it. And I share Councilwoman Fahey's frustration. But this has been and you said it too, Kelly, this has been going on for decades. And, we come up with, well, we're going to reimagine policing. Or I'd rather say reimagine public safety, where we come up with community policing, have people, social workers on the force, able to deal with these type of anger situations. Okay. Sometimes people just want to talk. I had one of the worst days of my life yesterday and beginning today. I called Jenny up and we talked and I felt so much better after talking to her. It had nothing to do with this, but it was other things going on. Sometimes people just need to talk and be able to have people that they're being listened to. What I'm hearing right now is that the council isn't listening to what the people want. And we got a serious problem. I mean, we got to do something. And I'm going to shut up now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Tom. Mr. Johnson, you were there 1 minute. I don't know if you still wanted to talk, but
I mean, basically, I just was gonna, because I'm getting phone calls as I'm listening to this, and when I hear people say conversations, the conversation has been held, and what the people spoke, and we are elected official by the people, and I understand that we have to make this difficult decisions, but sometimes the difficult decisions that we make are towards the police department as well when needed. And here, if like Tom said, I wasn't there, he wasn't there, but if we have somebody that's speaking on a PA system and that leads to them getting pepper spray, pepper spray is just one step under tear gas. And this is the same stuff that we're talking about, is that, these situations escalate. People aren't gonna sit back and back away because you spray some tear gas, because some of that stuff, it doesn't affect others as it does, and that's why some people, the traumatic experience is realer than others. So I just I don't want to handicap the police, but we can't keep on having the same scenarios happen, the same scenarios, and and this ain't against the police, but this is for the people. So I just wanted to say that there's definitely some activity going on down at the 2nd precinct, and it's unfortunate, and a lot of this is due to the conversations that we had at the last council meeting. And to say that, we need to keep talking, but yet we wake up and we still see incidents where this stuff is getting out of hand. So, thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Is that Joyce?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's me. So, I'm hearing everybody's story, but I was there last year also. The mayor called on Councilman Robertson and myself to go try to de-escalate the crowd. But I got a whiff of that tear gas. And if it wasn't for Sonia, I don't even know if I could have made it to the store. She really helped me. So I'm asking you, Kelly, to help me try to understand what you're trying to say. You're trying to say, well, if we throw one canister, or if we throw two canisters, I'm not understanding what you're saying.
There was a lot. There were a lot of canisters flying in different directions. So it wasn't just one or two. It was heavy. It was a lot. I mean, from where you were, I was just on the other side of that railing when everything started. You guys were all in there with the chief. I was in front of you. And so boom, boom, boom. And then they started throwing so it was the number of canisters that kept getting thrown.
So the crowd was large. The crowd was large, and it got larger as we were there. One of the people that started throwing the firecrackers or the quarter stick of dynamite, whatever you want to call it, we were told by one of the people that was standing there with Sonia and I that we need to get back on the other side of the fence because the guy on the left of us is getting ready to start throwing quarter sticks of dynamite. Well, that's what we did. What I think was when somebody did throw some firecrackers or a quarter stick of dynamite, the canisters started going off. It wasn't just one and then they waited to see if anybody dispersed. So how are you trying to say, how are we going to control this? I'm asking you. So you got 300 people out there and you got people throwing quarter sticks of dynamite, firecrackers. So from all different angles, how do you impose on controlling this?
Right, I think too much. Again, I'm not an expert. Gas was used. You make the initial application of it, and you wait. But again, there was still, once it got murky and cloudy, and you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, there still kept being fireworks going off. So we're trying to get through one way, then back the other, and so it's about. I think if they just stood their ground and this, I can't speak to their tactics and why they chose to venture out and they were clearing. That's maybe the chief made the call or someone made the call, but I think maybe just holding ground might have been better because again, it went up 2nd Street and then came out to Northern Boulevard and started pushing towards Clinton Avenue. So again, I think that decision was made at some level in the police department to clear everyone.
Yeah.
And that kind of fed the situation, I think.
Well, I'm against the tear gas, but we do have to find some type of alternative. I mean, I've got my neighbors over here, Sheridan Avenue got hit hard over here. And all night long, I'm getting phone calls from my constituents that the window was open because it was beautiful out. And they got hit with the tear gas. We had some people sitting out. So I like to ban the tear gas, but we do have to come up with some type of other alternative. Thank you.
Joyce. So we'll Ms. Farrell, we'll hear from you. And then my whole point, and I was just asking the questions, are members willing to move forward with this? And if members aren't, we may as well just pack it in and move forward with local law C as Mr. Shea put it forth. So Ms. Farrell.
I just wanted to do a quick note about, and this is, so it's really important as we're talking about the different things that are happening that we use the term protest and not riot, just because they're very different things. So I like not, and I think it's easy for us as we're talking passionately and to mention things, but I just wanted to make sure that as we're moving forward to make sure that we're using the language that matters, because language does matter. So that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Igo, you look like you're about to, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just have so much going through my mind. I lived in Ireland for a year. I was there when they had what they call Bloody Sunday. Okay. And that had been going on for the relations between the Protestants and the Catholics for hundreds of years. Okay. We finally had some agreement over there, the good peace, that Senator, what's his name? I forget. Okay. He put it together. It's falling apart again. Okay. 600 years, the Catholics were being just relegated, the same as black people in the South were, and before the slaves started getting brought over in the 1600s, we lived under penal laws. Still to this day, it's built into the minds of people. I don't know how I'll ever get out, okay? But Ginny just mentioned, what's the difference between a protest and a riot? Well, over here in this Bloody Sunday, okay, you had a group of Catholics, a group of Protestant youth start throwing bricks at each other, okay, this and that. What happened? I don't know, it was the Brits' way of saying de-escalation, okay? But they started firing all on one side. I am deadly against the bullets the rubber bullets that they used over there. They're about this long projectiles, okay? From what I understand, the projectiles they use here are more of a beanbag type of thing, but I just don't know. I mean, there's all sorts of studies done. They, put people together and there were changes made. They've lasted for a while, then or again, but I don't know. Then all I think about too is, people brought up again, January 6th. What was that? I don't know, what would you call it? Started a protest, a riot? Did it end up as a riot? Should tear gas have been used there? Were the people that were killed, will they still be alive if they used that tool, if they had the okay to do it? If they had better intelligence, as Tom was saying? And there isn't, we are undermanned. And when Tom said that someone should be undercover in that crowd, week before that, Tom, you said, what are you? Are you a cop? Well, if they thought you were a cop out there, would you like to be one? Okay, with all those people, I don't know. You think they're going to help you or saying, what are you? Get the hell out of here. So many questions come up. And I have no way of even making a suggestion. Are the people, professionals in this that have done background studies on it? We haven't heard from any of them, whether it's on the federal government, and maybe it was law enforcement, maybe it was the FBI that they teach at Quantico or whatever, but something, we have to make, you have to have some kind of alternative. Because if this thing, we could have a protest outside the Capitol, okay? Be in the Capitol. Anything could happen. And what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Let it, what if it's outside City Hall? What are we going to do? There has to be some alternative. That's what I want to know. That's what I think people deserve the right to know. And, the one thing that the cops said when they fired that tear gas, I don't know who calls it de-escalation, whether it's law enforcement, wherever these people were trained to teach them, because there's two sides. And that shooting a tear gas is supposed to give a piece of ground in between, separating people. That is de-escalation instead of going at each other. So there's things just bothering me. Kelly, it doesn't sound like you have the votes. I would be voting for some of your changes, but it is what it is. And I think you're going to see a future where stuff's going to happen and people are going to get hurt, and very unfortunate. But I won't be in City Hall, hopefully, for it. Good night, people.
Thank you, Mr. Igo. With that, it was good that we had the discussion. I think we need lengthier discussion, even regardless of what happens moving forward next week. This is ongoing, just like the reform process, the collaborative. It's a moving, living, breathing thing, and we have to roll with the punches and change where we need to. So with that, all right, I'll pack what I offered in, and we'll move forward on Monday. Okay. So I'd make the motion to end the meeting, to adjourn, so. All right. Y'all be safe, and I'll see you soon.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.